A wedding planner wasn't on my top 10 list of guests to feature on this podcast.
But we've run across a young lady in the wedding business here in town
with a very impressive story.
And her vision is to plan weddings that respect our earth and don't beat it to a pulp.
I know that floats your boat, Dave.
Yep. Let's hear the story.
And learn how to have a sustainable wedding.
Next on Loving the Springs, the podcast that celebrates the best of Colorado and Manitou Springs and strives to elevate the rest.
This is Studio 809 Podcasts, informing, connecting, and empowering the residents of the Pikes Peak region.
I'm Dave Gardner.
And I'm Al Brody.
We're coming to you from the Studio 809 Community Podcast Studio at the Next Us, a professional, cooperative environment for small businesses in downtown Colorado Springs.
We're recording this episode on February 14th, 2025. Still looking for a third co-host? Email us at studio809podcasts@gmail.com.
Well, let's welcome to the studio Maréa Janae. She grew up in the Springs and planned her first wedding when she was 19. She founded and heads up Dreamcatcher Weddings in Colorado Springs. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you grew up in the Springs.
Correct.
Weren't born here?
I moved here from Indiana when I was 2.5.
Smart
Grew
move.
up on Garden of the Gods.
A Hoosier.
I'm a Colorado native through and through. Just accidentally was born in the wrong place.
Okay.
Yeah. You're an outdoors girl, I get the impression.
Absolutely, yes. I rock climb, do yoga, hike, classic Coloradan things.
Cool.
Yep.
How about bike? I always ask about the bike.
I live downtown, so I love biking just within the downtown area as transit, but I am not a mountain biker. It scares me too much.
Okay.
See too many friends get crazy injuries from it.
So you ride for transportation?
I do.
Me too. Give me 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I don't like a bicycle seat so much that I just go out and ride 40 or 50 miles for fun.
No, but when you live downtown, sometimes it's faster than driving and having to find parking.
Yeah, it's great for parking.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm jumping the shark to want to ask you right off about your relationship with Venatucci.
Do you want me to kind of go into just kind of the whole business backstory? Because that kind of plays a significant role in that story.
Let's do that, but we're going to make everybody watch your video, so you don't have to repeat what's in that video. You've got to go to dreamcatcherwed.com and look at the great video that's right on her homepage.
It's better than anything we could do here.
Yeah, so that's great. So you don't have to repeat all that, but maybe give us a little bit of your backstory. Sure.
Sure, just a little bit of a teaser. So like you said, I started planning weddings for friends when I was 19, offered to help one of my mom's friends plan a backyard wedding that was in 2 weeks. And pulled that off and just kind of became the wedding planner for my friend group. Did that on and off here and there for a few years until I finally was convinced by some folks in my life that I should actually start charging money for it, and took an online course and decided to jump in with both feet and see how it went, and could never have imagined the wild journey that it would take me on. But I opened in October of 2018. So 2019 was really our first wedding season, and then 2020 would have been our second season, but obviously both weddings and planning were not happening.
No kidding. Took the wind right out of those sails.
So not a great time to be a wedding planner. But through a cosmic twist of fate, I ended up meeting someone who kind of came alongside me to help me figure out how to focus this business on sustainability. And that was one of my intentions going into it, because it's one of my personal ethos, is just trying to minimize my impact and be aware of, where things that I'm purchasing are sourced from, how I'm disposing of them, and just trying to be more mindful of that. But wanted to do that within the business, didn't really know how to do it. And so this woman named Trisha came alongside me, and we spent 2020 just going through the business and figuring out what does it mean to be a sustainable wedding planner, because there's not really many resources or guidebooks out there to figure out how to do that. And so we spent the year just combing through every aspect of my business, figuring out what that could look like for us as wedding planners, and then reaching out and connecting with as many people as we could find across Colorado who were in the wedding industry and shared similar values, and just asking them, what does it mean to be a sustainable photographer, florist, caterer, bartender, and just learning what other people across the industry were doing. And so that kind of is the lead into the Vinatucci story, because it was the perfect setup for then at the end of 2020, a lot of stuff in my life fell apart and everything was going poorly. And I almost shut the doors and was literally downloading apps to just get like a driving job just to get through, because weddings still weren't happening. I wasn't making any money. So I was like, okay, maybe we just need to put this on the back burner. And then right at that perfect moment, my wonderful friend Felicia introduced me to the three sisters that had just taken over Vinatucci Farm. And the community foundation had given them the lease on the property with the conditions that they open it not only as a flower farm, which is what they were looking to do, but also as a wedding and events venue and bring back the community pumpkin patch. So they said yes.
So they had the flower expertise, but they weren't wedding planners to begin with.
They had no wedding industry experience, didn't want to be running a wedding venue. They just kind of said yes and figured they would figure it out along the way. And so, yeah, I met them at the perfect moment. And the land is actually on a conservation easement. And so they also cared about sustainability. And so they said, yeah, we want to do this sustainably. And we want to do this in a way that is really honoring this property that's been a part of the community for almost 90 years. And so I came in and was like, oh, well, I actually just so happened spent the last year studying sustainability in the wedding industry, and have also spent these last couple of years building out my own systems and processes and just creating a really efficient back-end system for my business. And I think I could really help you with that.
And that moment, they checked their pulse because they figured they'd died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a very exciting partnership on both ends. We were all very excited to have found each other and connected in that moment.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, definitely another moment of cosmic alignment. So initially, the deal was that I would help them set up all of that back-end systems, processes, packages, contracts, help them know how to think about the industry and how they should charge and all of that type of stuff that's needed to get a wedding venue off the ground. And in exchange, they would include my wedding planning packages and all the venue packages. So whenever someone booked a wedding at the venue, they were automatically booking my services. And we would double as the month of coordinators as well as the venue managers. So they also didn't have to hire a venue manager to run the wedding day. So that was the partnership for a couple of years. We ran all of the weddings that happened there and, continued to offer consulting and just kind of help build that business structure. And so then after 2 years of that partnership, they came to me and they said, hey, we really just don't want to be doing anything related to running this venue. We have enough on our hands. They'd had some rough times with, grasshoppers and hail and just different challenges hitting the farm, and are still learning how to be flower farmers, and just really wanted to be able to put their full energy towards building that business. So they said, hey, do you just want to take over and be the operator and sublease the venue from us and have pretty much full say in how it's marketed, how it's run, what the policies are, as well as, not only running the weddings, but also the prom and graduation party and reunion and all of the different events that happen in that space.
So I'm just going to butt in like I have been. And so I'm thinking, wow, what a great idea, because if all of those things are being done sustainably, that's a nice gift that you're giving to the community.
Absolutely, yeah. And some people are more excited about that than others. From day one, I always said that it was just going to be a single-use plastics-free venue.
At least, I would hope.
Which is kind of a novel concept. I don't know of any other venues that are doing that in Colorado. And so the way that works is that I have recycling and compost set up on site. Our friend Nico with Growing Gurus is the person who would haul out our compost and manage all of that. And then if people, rather than using single-use plastics for their event, if they were trying to use disposable plates, forks, cups, napkins, we would buy everything in bulk and sell those items to them at cost to lower the cost of having compostable goods for their wedding. So all of the, the plates with all the food on it, the fork, the napkin, the cup can all just get thrown straight into the compost bin. And then the recycling is mainly just used for like wine bottles and beer cans. And then usually I would just hide the landfill bin in the corner so that people aren't using it, and then just set recycling and compost out.
So you weren't tempted to just make sure you had reusable dishes for them to use?
We didn't have a good way to wash those dishes. It would have required acquiring an industrial dishwasher, and that's just a whole nother system. I did look into it and consider it. And there are rental companies in town, so if it's in the budget, sometimes folks will just rent their table settings from the local rental companies. Yeah. But a lot of times they're on a tighter budget that doesn't allow for that. So buying bulk compostables and then selling them at cost was kind of the happy medium to make it so that they could have that without it being a huge added expense.
Do the compostable materials that you throw out basically stay on the farm?
No, so that's where my friend Nico with Growing Gurus comes in. We would bag them up in compostable bags, take them out to the compost bin, just like you would taking out the recycling. Mm-hmm. And then he would come by and haul that out to his property where he has a bigger industrial compost facility and breaks all that down.
Okay.
And then he's able to turn it back into compost that we can use again on the farm. So that's just kind of one of the major ways that we prioritized sustainability at the venue. But definitely getting to teach people about sustainability kind of throughout the process of just having events there and holding to these standards. So we spent the last 2 years as the venue operators at Vinatucci, which was really a dream come true for me because I have a dream of one day owning and operating my own flower farm wedding venue. So when I got offered the opportunity to run a wedding venue without the, full investment and commitment of actually purchasing it, it just felt like the universe just kind of handing me this perfect opportunity to get to experiment with that before being fully committed and have kind of a more low risk opportunity to get to play around with that. So yeah, it was just a really crazy opportunity that I was really excited to jump at and get to be part of, and such a cool history to be a part of, this property that has been giving back to the community for almost 90 years. Just a really cool legacy to uphold and to get to learn more about as people would come on the property and say, hey, we want to have our wedding here. We grew up going here. My dad used to work on the farm with the Vinatucci's, and, people just have so much history with that property. And just growing up there and remembering, getting their pumpkin there when they were in third grade. And
now, if anybody's kind of new to the Springs and listening to this, they may not really be aware of that whole history. Pretty sure on the Vinatucci website, probably there's a pretty good history, right? So
yeah, there's also a short tidbit about it on the Pioneer Museum page. But yeah, it was opened in 1936 by a family of Italian immigrants who ran it as a livestock and vegetable farm for decades and are most famous for giving tens of thousands of pumpkins away to school children every year.
Yeah. And there was a fantastic statue at the Pioneers Museum of Mr. Vinatucci handing a pumpkin to a child.
And I'm pretty sure it was the last working farm anywhere near the city.
Yep. And they didn't have any children to pass it on to, so they donated it to Pikes Peak Community Foundation when they passed away.
Yeah, and of course, Air Force firefighting chemicals put an end to the farm, into that business too, tragically.
Right.
I thought that was Schlage Lock. Wait a second, you're picking on the Air Force now?
Yep, so the water contamination shut the property down for several years. It sat vacant until Nikki McCumsey decided she wanted to open she was looking for a property to open a flower farm, and she was like, oh, flowers aren't a consumable product.
Yeah, perfect.
So why can't we use this old empty farm property?
Fascinating. So you're still doing that? You're managing the whole place right now?
Actually, as of the first of this year, we have handed management of that back to Nikki and her sister Abby and their team with Gather Mountain Blooms. We kind of reevaluated and realized that we were not attracting the type of couples that were really most aligned with what we're trying to do, which is focus on sustainability. A lot of the couples that we were attracting there weren't always excited about that. There was, some tension in that.
Shoot.
And it took a lot of our time and energy and resources. And so it was kind of feeling like, maybe the season for running that experiment was coming to a close. And at the same time, Gather Mountain Blooms was having a lot of success with their community events. They do Rocky Mountain Flower Fest every year and lots of workshops and you pick flower events and music events. And they were wanting more space to expand into, wanting to take up more space within the venue side to be able to host more community events and, you know, kind of had their business established enough to be able to take on the venue side of things again. So it was a loving and mutual decision to hand the reins of operations back to the sisters so that we could go on and focus on other priorities for us. But it was just such a cool learning and growing experience, and I'm eternally thankful for having had that opportunity.
That's great. So I'm thinking, you know, we've used the word sustainability a few times, and I think people have probably just from the conversation gotten the impression, well, it's something about living more lightly on the planet. Do you want to define it any better than that for anybody who might be new to the idea?
Yeah, I mean, every time I say I'm a sustainable wedding planner, people are like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
No one's really heard of that concept. And so I love getting to educate people on what that looks like, which is, for us, it's an ever-evolving process. I never claim to have arrived anywhere or mastered anything. But it means that, yeah, we have the intention of planning weddings in a way that is a little more gentle on the planet. For us, that starts with intentionality and starting our wedding planning process with helping our couples define what their intentions are with their event and hone in on what's really important to them so that they can let go of all of the other things that are just societal expectations and norms and what their parents want and things that aren't really important to them. And then it's really that thread of intentionality that we carry all the way through, helping them source items that are more thoughtfully sourced. So working with caterers that source their food locally, working with florists that use flowers largely grown within Colorado, you know, just kind of thinking through things like that. And then another big part of it is how is the waste being disposed of? So at the end of the night, most weddings that you'll ever attend, pretty much everything just gets thrown straight into the trash. The cheap decorations, the flowers, the food waste, if they are using disposable plates, utensils, cups, the half-used candles, absolutely everything goes straight to the landfill and produces, by one estimate, between 400 and 600 pounds of landfill waste.
That would be the average wedding waste?
Yeah. So what we are trying to do is just think differently about where all those things are going at the end of the night. When it comes to decor, we actually have a decor inventory, so our couples can donate their items to our inventory, and then we allow our couples to use it at no additional cost. So all sorts of, signage and candles and fairy lights and cornhole boards and all just kind of the commonly used stuff that gets used at every wedding. We allow our couples to use that for free, and then we bring it back to the inventory rather than it getting thrown away or sitting in their garage and they have to figure out what to do with it. With flowers, we either donate to a local nursing home. Actually, the place I donate to is like 2 blocks down. Or depending on just kind of the state that the flowers are in, either I'll donate them to the nursing home or dry them out and turn them into flower confetti to use for future weddings. Like rather than tossing, bird seed, we'll toss flower confetti that is dried from past weddings. And we actually bring our compost and recycle bins to every wedding that we work and help the caterers and bartenders sort waste out and then haul that back. And I drop that compost off at Food to Power. So all of the food waste and any other like plant scraps, as well as those compostable goods, if they're using those, all gets thrown in the compost and taken to Food to Power. So yeah, we're usually able to divert several hundreds of pounds of waste from the landfill at each wedding.
So I take it the most sustainable wedding is you go to the Justice of the Peace and you get married.
And you ride your bike over there.
You ride your bike to the Justice of the Peace and you're done.
Oh, absolutely.
So that would be the extreme. Now, I'm going to a wedding in a couple of weeks, and it's in Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, nice.
And it's a small group of family, basically, that are going to a very unsustainable place in an unsustainable way. But we're not doing it with hundreds of people. So there's different ways of looking at that as a sustainable or not unsustainable, and I think it's very unsustainable.
Yeah.
to me, poverty would drive sustainability in a wedding. And I think back to New York, where I grew up, and the Italian immigrants that had the least money would have a football wedding, and the football was sub sandwiches. And they would throw between the bride's family and the groom's family these sub sandwiches back and forth to each other. And it became a football wedding. That was a big part of it. But it was basically sub sandwiches wrapped up in aluminum foil. And they would dance and sing and drink. And that was fairly sustainable by
Did they
today's
recycle
standard.
the aluminum foil?
Probably not, because that wasn't really a thing
Sure.
back then.
That was back in the old days.
But now, so there's the spectrum. I'm trying to build a spectrum here. So you have just a elope, basically, this poverty-driven football wedding, and then all sorts of things. So the bigger the wedding gets, the more people, the less friendly to the environment it could become. Mm-hmm. And I think your greatest good is having a very large wedding in a sustainable way.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. And I think that we do have to accept that throwing an event is inherently unsustainable, as is existing. Being a human, you're going to have an impact and you can't avoid that.
Yeah.
And so, you do have to accept that, yes, you're absolutely right. The most sustainable wedding is going to a courthouse, because there's not going to be any impact to that, especially if you ride your bike. But I am a really big believer in celebrating love and bringing community together, and, bringing your family and your friends and your loved ones from every circle into one space and just having a moment to feast and dance and laugh and celebrate together. And I think that makes for a better world. And so the benefits of that, to me, outweigh the cost of there is going to be a negative impact to some extent, but my mindset is focused on how can we reduce that negative impact and just be really mindful of what that is and have some awareness of that and take some steps to move in the right direction. So my, broader goal is to really shift the industry as a whole in that direction, so that I'm no longer the crazy person in the room saying, hey, is it cool if I bring my compost bins to your wedding? And, will your catering team help me sort? And, I always get weird looks like, what, you're bringing a compost bin to a wedding? People don't understand that. And I would like to shift the industry towards a place where that's normalized. And a wedding without a compost and recycling bin would be what's considered weird.
I live in a city called Black Rock City, a week each year. It's called Burning Man. And there are many, many weddings there. And the weddings, I think...
Oh, I would love to hear about Burning Man weddings.
How sustainable they are at Burning Man. Now, Burning Man itself, the getting there and burning things is not very sustainable, even though sustainability and lowering the environmental impact is a key focus of Burning Man. There are some fantastic examples. I'll give you one, is everybody at Burning Man carries their own cup.
Nice.
and utensils. So you get food, but there's no paper plates.
I love that.
There's no napkins.
That's genius.
Yeah.
It is. But it's a total paradigm shift that people are going to come to a wedding with their own glass for wine or beer or whatever.
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine. Honestly, I can't imagine. So
Kind of like a dream come true for you, isn't it?
where I was going with this is, give us a little synopsis of the most out there sustainable wedding you've had where people really wanted to push the envelope.
I have to think about that one. We did get to do a really cool wedding at a geodome off-grid property on the Colorado-Wyoming border. And it was, this couple's private property. And they did everything on their property, which is fully, solar powered. And they did the ceremony up on a hilltop and the cocktail hour inside their geodome house and the reception in this big garage that they kind of remodeled for the wedding, and used their own pizza ovens to cook pizzas. So I'd say that was definitely one of the more, when you say out there sustainable weddings. I'm working with a couple right now who's getting married at Denver Botanical Gardens this coming summer. The groom works as a farming educator for like a middle school. So he runs this farm and teaches the students how to farm within their schooling program. And then the bride is an owl researcher. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted to get married, in a really sustainable place. So, all of their wedding venue cost is going towards continuing to fund Denver Botanical Gardens. And one of the cool elements that we've talked about that I think / hope is going to work out is that she wanted to have some owls present at a cocktail hour and have some of her friends give little short education pieces about the owls. So it's, very conservation focused.
That'll be a hoot.
That's going to be a really cool one. She's also using a lot of animal skulls and, feathers and rocks and moss and different natural elements that she's collected to kind of build out the centerpieces, which give me a bag of moss to decorate with, and I'm a happy camper. So it's going to be a really fun one.
Very neat.
Sounds good.
Safe to say probably most people that are planning weddings or having weddings today, they're pretty blissfully ignorant of, why would we even care, or why is there even any need to live more lightly on the planet, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it's something that people really are thinking about. I mean, when you start planning a wedding, you're immediately overwhelmed. There's so much information. There's so much you don't know. It's a whole new world that you're being thrust into. And there's just so much overwhelm that happens that people just aren't often thinking about that added element of, what is the impact of this going to be? Where's my food and flowers going to go at the end of the night?
Yeah, they just want it to be the most beautiful thing they ever did. That's at the top of mind. Ballpark, how many weddings a year are you planning right now?
25.
25. Those are the lives of 25 brides and grooms and their guests and family, and they go through this experience with you. Do you feel like you're educating them and sending them out into the world maybe better planetary citizens?
I definitely like to think that people are learning some things throughout the planning process, both about sustainability and also about just intentional event planning, which just really goes hand in hand. But it is really exciting that as we've progressed as a business and really branded ourselves as Colorado's Sustainable Wedding Planner, we do have people who reach out to us because they typed in Sustainable Wedding Planner into Google just to be like, does this exist?
And
they found us. And so that's oftentimes how we get a lot of these really aligned couples, like the owl researcher and the farmer. And this morning I was just talking to a couple. I did a client consultation with a couple in Boulder who both builds and maintains trails out there. And those are the type of people who are actually looking for what we have to offer and are already very aligned. So sometimes we get that. And then sometimes we get, someone just typed in wedding planner into Google, or we were on a preferred venue list. And so they weren't looking for sustainability, but it's just kind of an added perk that they get to learn about along the way.
Good story. We know you are an outdoors girl, but is there something else, some moment or some experience or series of events that kind of inspired you to be this motivated to shrink people's impact on the planet?
Great question. I was not raised to have an awareness of environmental impact. I would say we recycled a few items, not religiously, but it was not really something that I was taught about as a kid. Mm-hmm. But what I was taught is to have a really strong moral compass and to live by my values. And, obviously being raised in the Springs, those were very religious focused values. But as I got older and started to, see the world for myself, I came to find other values that were really important to me. And as I just kind of did my own study and learning and traveling around the world and getting to see things from other perspectives, I just started to really realize the impact that humans are having on our planet. And back in my early 20s, I started something called DocuNight, where I would get together with my friends. Originally, it was once a week, and then, every couple weeks. And we would watch a documentary about some, social justice topic or, an environmental concern, because I just really wanted to learn about these different topics. And it's, kind of hard to watch some of those documentaries by yourself. And I really wanted to do it in community. So we would gather and share food and catch up and then watch a documentary and then have a conversation afterwards. So that's really where I feel like I learned a lot about what's going on environmentally, the impact of plastic. There's a really impactful documentary called The Story of Plastics, and the true cost about fashion. And then, I would just have conversations with my friends about those topics and say, what, can we do about this? And what is being done about this? And I've always had a really strong heart for social justice, and I'm just wanting to be a voice for those less fortunate than me. And I think that is something, like I was saying, that was really ingrained in me from my childhood. And so, when I just started to realize the unbelievable impact that humans are having on our earth, and the way that business and corporations have such a strong impact on that and are really just time after time after time prioritizing profit over longevity of, being able to sustain life on the planet, I just really wanted to find a way to live that out differently in my own life. And I think that it is really cool to get to try to do business in a capitalistic society in which profit is king, to try to flip that script and figure out how to make a successful and profitable business that is actually focused on making the world a better place. And I think it's a really exciting business concept that is emerging. And it's really fun to get to just kind of experiment with that and figure out how to make my impact while also running a successful business.
A challenge for sure.
Yeah.
It is constantly, we talk about plastics, where it's plastic-free July. Have you ever heard of that? We're supposed to live without touching plastics. And within the first few seconds of the month, you fall apart completely because you're wearing plastic, you're sitting on plastic, everything you touch that's a toiletry is plastic.
You can't get takeout food, you can't use your toothbrush.
It's so strange when you start to look at it that way, that plastic is so much a part of our lives that we don't know how to just change that. So attempting to reverse that is fantastic.
Plastic is definitely one of my soapboxes, and I agree that it's pretty mind-blowing how much it's infiltrated our world in ways that are completely unnecessary. And there's so many other alternative products that would do just as well, if not better, in most areas. And we just are refusing to use those because big oil holds the reins. So it's pretty mind-blowing, and definitely recommend that documentary, The Story of Plastics, to anyone who wants to learn more about that.
If you haven't seen it, the movie The Graduate has a line in the movie. And this line it stands out because I heard it the first time and I was like, I think he's right. And it was, the future is in plastics. And that was a line in the movie. And I wonder what the movie would be now that says the future is in fill in the blank.
AI.
You may be right.
Yeah, or cryptocurrency or something like that.
So we are called Loving the Springs. And the question is, what is it about the Springs that you love?
It's a great question. There are a lot of things, but if I had to narrow it down, I would say number one is I love living under the shadow of Tava, also known as Pikes Peak. Growing up here, I've always had this mountain to look up to, and it's just been a really grounding and stabilizing force in my life. Anytime I come home from a trip, that's how you know you're home, is when you see the mountain. And so I just have always loved having this big, beautiful presence in my life. Number two would be I love never being more than a 15-minute drive from being completely surrounded by nature. And, you have a lot of the hubbub and activity and arts and culture of a bigger city, but you also can get away from it all as quickly as you want to and go for a hike and just feel like you're alone in nature. And I think having that balance is really special and unique.
Is there a special place that you have? Would you share not necessarily a secret hike or a spot, but something that you really feel good about, where it is 15 minutes away and there you are?
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely have a few. I don't think I have like a single go-to. I love when I'm hanging out and catching up with a friend, just walking through Red Rock's open space, because you can just kind of wander around forever until you finally decide to wrap up your conversation and make your way back to the car. And I also spend a lot of time in Cheyenne Canyon. As a rock climber, there's places to rock climb. There's a beautiful creek if I just want to sit by some water. I can go for, a more extreme hike or just kind of wander through the trail system and take it easy. I'd say those are a couple of my favorite spots, but there's a lot of beautiful secret hidden spots in town that I love spending time. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention that I really love about the Springs is going back to the wedding industry. I think that our wedding community that we have here is really extraordinary. And I've heard this perspective, especially from folks who have come from another city, folks who have come from Denver or from, bigger cities in California, that they're just kind of shocked and astounded by how collaborative and community oriented we are here. There is just kind of this mindset that there's enough business to go around and we don't need to be cutthroat and backstabbing to make our own business succeed. And there is just like this really beautiful community environment. And my fellow wedding vendor friends have had my back on so many occasions. Sometimes I borrow assistance from my fellow wedding planners, or, we refer business to each other. And I just feel like the energy of the wedding community here is something that I really appreciate.
Thank you.
Wow. It sounds like all is well with the world. For a few minutes. That's really great. And I love Cheyenne Canyon. Ditto. I second your emotion on all things that you love about Colorado Springs.
Yeah, I love looking at Pikes Peak and seeing a different mountain every single time you look at it. The weather is different. The snow is different.
Yeah, I had to leave to come back and appreciate it. When I was a kid, my mom would always point it out and be like, look at that mountain. Because like you said, it is always doing something different. And I was just like, Mom, it's the same mountain that was there yesterday. And I wasn't amazed by it until I left and went to objectively beautiful places, but just having that time to be away and then come back to it. Now I'm definitely the one who's like, look at that mountain. Isn't she gorgeous today?
That's great.
And yeah, she does look a little bit different every day.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yep, that's great. There's more to love about the Springs after having this great conversation with you. Thanks, Maréa. Not every episode, but many episodes, we really try to feature a local hero or a local champion, somebody like that. What do you think, Al? I think it's fair to say
2 thumbs up. She qualifies. Yes.
Yeah, you are. We want to thank you for being a shining ray of light in this community, and you're doing great stuff. Bravo.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. I love what I do, and I love getting to try to make a change.
Keep pushing the compostable envelope.
I certainly will.
We should repeat, and I'll let you do it, where our listeners can view the video, because this is a really well done video, and the storytelling is amazing.
Yep. The easy thing to do is go to dreamcatcherwed.com. Should we give a shout out to the filmmaker?
Absolutely. Yeah. My friend Adam at Epic Moment did that video for me, and I actually put the video together to show at my business's 5th birthday party. You can find us on Instagram at dreamcatcherweddingsco, or online, dreamcatcherwed.com. And I am, in addition to always looking to connect with couples who want a sustainable wedding planner, I'm just really love connecting with other folks in the industry. And I'm really passionate about networking and building out that network of like-minded vendors who are also trying to make the world a better place.
So real quick, I want to give people an update on the e-bikes policy issue, which has been bubbling around in Colorado Springs for a few months because City Council made a few decisions recently. There were some of us, I think it's safe to include you and me, Al, in that, is that we were hoping that the City Council would decide to put to a vote of the public any decision to officially allow any kind of e-bikes on TOPS acquired land because of the requirements of the law that put TOPS into place, which says no motorized anything. I don't think you can even operate a blender. But anyway, council decided not to go that route. They decided to just make this administrative change to redefine Class 1 e-bikes as non-motorized and then let the Parks Department start rolling out where they're going to allow Class 1 e-bikes.
It's the right thing to do.
but the wrong way to do it, I think.
No, it's administrivia that we must go through to get to the other side in a way that we wrote some rules and we should stick by those rules. And this is what you got to go through. So it's a couple of hoops to jump through, but I think they're worth jumping through because we intentionally put them there so that other things don't derail us. And that's not bad.
Medicine Wheel Trail Advocates, which is a local nonprofit that's a big promoter of making mountain biking.
Making trails and trail maintenance, yes.
Yeah, and making it easier and more fun and safe and environmentally responsible for all the mountain biking we can get in the area. And they're good people, and they were trying to encourage City Council to go the route of putting this up to a public vote to amend the TOPS ordinance. They have said, while they're disappointed that City Council didn't take that route, they're going to respect that council decision and go forward and make the best of that situation. The other organization that had stood up and said, we really think you need to put this up to a vote was Together for Colorado Springs, that political organization co-founded by John Weiss, the founder of the Colorado Springs Independent and the Colorado Springs Business Journal 30 years ago. They encouraged council to put that up to a vote and, in fact, hired an attorney who told City Council that they were considering litigation if council didn't do that.
So it's either litigation or administrivia. But either way, the bureaucracy will grind through this issue.
But City Council, so they're aware of that possibility of litigation. They've decided to go forward. Of course, as we record this on February 21st, they have to do a second reading on their decision to turn it over to the Parks Department and redefine a Class 1 e-bike. But we had a brief conversation with John Weiss to see whether Together for Colorado Springs was going to go ahead and pursue litigation, and we want to share a few of his comments with you.
We believe that the city of Colorado Springs needs to regulate e-bikes. They're popular, they're new in the community. But we believe that there's a proper way to do that. And that is to let the people vote on a policy, because the TOPS law enacted by the people had two pertinent provisions. Number one, it says no motorized vehicles whatsoever. Number two is that the only way to change this legislation is by a vote of the people. We urged the city to put a measure on the ballot, pretty much any measure they wanted, but some measure giving the city the ability to regulate e-bikes. They didn't do it for a variety of good reasons. There was lots of different issues, but instead they're trying to do it administratively. We're concerned about administratively for two reasons. The first reason is that if they can make this change administratively, they can make other changes. And the Trust for Public Lands, which has done this across the country, have lots of examples where cities have tried to be horribly creative and destructive and manipulating their version of trails, open space, and parks measure. And this has nothing to do with the current administration, but this measure goes on for 20 plus years. And we don't want them to say the Red Rocks open space is a golf course now without a vote of the people. They can do whatever they want without a vote of the people. Right now, we're going to closely monitor how the city goes forward and regulates e-bikes. We're not saying we will never sue, but we're not going to sue until we've exhausted other opportunities, and that's going to the people in April 2027. We don't mind if it's 2 years, as long as they don't do anything more than what they're doing, which is e-bikes on urban trails and e-bikes on non-TOPS funded properties. Both of those they can do. As soon as they start announcing regulations, they're going to allow e-bikes on TOPS funded properties that are open space, we are going to re-examine the situation. We're open to regulating e-bikes on TOPS lands. We just are adamant that it's not done by the Parks Department without a vote of the people.
Okay, so based on his comments, it sounds like everybody's adopting a wait and see to see how the city proceeds with this. They're not promising that they won't sue sometime down the road. We'll see what happens.
John Weiss assured us that it won't be until the ballot in spring of 2027. They won't sue until then. They'll allow this to go the way it's going until then. That's what I heard.
I know if they got a promise that it was going to go on the ballot, then they wouldn't sue. But I wonder if they really will just wait and hope. I think it's safe to say that the candidates running for city council right now in the April city election, they're all going to be asked that question, what they will do about this if they're elected. The current city council is looking a little bit like there's one interpretation is that they really don't respect the voters of Colorado Springs as much as they should. Based on one, they're choosing to ignore the TOPS ordinance in going forward with this, and two, their attempt to ban recreational marijuana, even though the public voted to allow recreational marijuana in the fall election. A lot of people feel disrespected by those actions of city council.
In most democracies, half of the people will be unhappy and the other half will be satisfied with the outcome. This is no different. So to expect everybody to be thrilled about anything is not reality.
But on principle, the principle is kind of a little bit more important to me anyway. I'm happy to have e-bikes in a lot more places, totally legal in Colorado Springs. But I also would love to have a city council that really respects the voters and doesn't try to do an end run around the voters. And this almost feels like that a little bit. So we'll see.
We will see.
More later.
All right. I'm still loving it, and so are you.
Me too, and it was great having Maréa on, and so we're still looking for a third co-host, so we hope to hear from you. Make a comment wherever you see this podcast or email us at studio809podcasts@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to Loving the Springs. Follow this podcast to keep up on
what's going on,
what's going well,
and what could use some improvement.
Share it with your friends, family, and colleagues.
And be sure to visit studio809podcasts.com to check out the amazing lineup of community podcasts. Think globally, listen locally.
We'll catch you next time.
In the Pikes Peak region, there's no shortage of activities. Whether you're experiencing breathtaking parks or magnificent works of art, if you're getting fashionable at a film festival or fresh at a farmer's market, if you want to hear the sweet sounds of a symphony or the smooth shred of a Stratocaster, look no further than Peak Radar, your one-stop shop for all events in the Pikes Peak region, your free source for viewing and posting events. So no matter how you engage with our beautiful region, visit peakradar.com and get plugged into the peak.